Hey guys, how you going?
Hello.
Morning.
Good morning, James.
Howdy, folks.
Hey,
Morning. All right.
I'll wait till we get to around maybe 12 or so participants and we'll kind of get kicked off. A lot of material for us to kind of cover today, so.
Hi Maurice, it's Jan here. Just so that you know, I can stay for the first 60 minutes, but I've got another meeting at 11:30, so I'm gonna have to jump off then if we're still going. I've invited a couple of other guys from BHA to join in as well.
Thanks, Jan. Thank you. And plus, I'm catching up with you guys in a couple of weeks anyway, right? So if there's any additional questions, we can kind of go through that then.
Yep, absolutely.
Just 3 more people to go and we'll get kick started. Just trying to get to that 12 participants mark.
I think we've got a few more of our gang, Maurice, kind of getting headsets organised, etc.
Okay, sweet. Is there still a few people on your end, Sol, if you're looking around?
Let me do a shout out. Yeah, I've got a thumbs up from everyone, Maurice.
If you don't mind jumping on mute as soon as you guys connect, yeah, sweet. Thank you everybody for joining us. It's been a long time coming. I know I've spoken about this particular data asset, and its availability for a little while now. I think we're at a stage now where we want to ensure that all of the analysts that we're in touch with on a regular basis are across the particular solution, because we've just started our level of engagement with different people across the business, different stakeholder groups, to let them know, hey, this is available and you should be able to liaise with your appropriate support team. To be able to kind of milk the value out of web behaviors. So thank you everybody for joining. The purpose of today's session is to go through a few different things. One is just a little bit of a background as to where we stand from a digital analytics standpoint, the reasons why we prioritize particular elements of work over the past 10 to 11 months, which led to the creation of this particular asset. And then we'll go through the solution design, what we've pulled together. We'll then go into how it works, how it's updated, how you can access information and material that supports this particular access, and then we can talk about next steps and where we see this going. So yeah. To kick things off, 12 months ago, I came up with a digital analytics team vision that was broken down to be able to answer every question, raise a few more, innovate at every opportunity, and empower a wider team to be best in class. Now, a few of you have already been through this vision, so I won't bore you too much on that. But basically, if we were to break down that particular strategy, it's really building out the fundamental elements, the initial stages of what we need to be able to deliver first before we can start delivering on concepts around best in class. Now, I know a lot of you can appreciate that there are a lot of fundamental things that we would like to kind of have sorted so that we can deliver our analytics capabilities a little bit more optimally. And that's basically the sort of tack that we had. So within stage one, a few of the dependencies was around database infrastructure, tool availability, be able to set up standardized reporting to be able to facilitate the majority of the requests that were coming into the digital analytics team. and yeah, that's half the reason why we developed this solution. How have the team developed through the particular stages? We ran a whole bunch of initiatives, agile working as one of them, as well as training to be able to help us move from stage one concepts from a reporting perspective into being able to answer or raise a few more questions around what we can particularly do with what we've observed. So at the start, we were answering a lot of questions like how many people were visiting our website, how many visitors were coming through search channels, how many people were coming through direct. We had marketing managers come to us and say, okay, of all the people that we've emailed over the past few months, how many interact with that email communication, and then eventually ended up onto the website and thus a sale or a lead. And we started move towards an engagement model where it wasn't so much focusing on what had happened, but why things particular happened and what we can do about changing some of the things that we've seen from a performance perspective. A few of you in this session would have taken part in our Adobe Academy as well. So where we were kind of upskilling some of the people across the business to be able to use tools that we were using in the team, like Adobe Analytics, to be able to facilitate basic questions around web behavior as well. As a result of releasing those particular initiatives, we saw a reduction in the reporting requests because people were facilitating some of those quick question and answer scenarios themselves, and we started to move into the space where we wanted to be, and that's more of the more advanced sort of analytics requests. So the main tool that we use.
Hi, Stuart. You mentioned the Adobe Academy. Is there an opportunity for that is that still available if we wanted people to go to have a bit of training on it?
Yes, it is still available. So we were holding fortnightly sessions with Christian Leyland in my team. Basically what it wasn't structured training, i.e. come to us next Tuesday afternoon and we'll take you through how to do A or how to do B. Because we were working agile, our engagement model with the rest of the business was, hey guys, if you wanted us to take a look at a piece of work, let's catch up over the course of the next 2 weeks, and then hopefully we can prioritize that work to be kicked off in 2 weeks' time. And then we supplemented that with additional dialogue to state, hey guys, if you want to bypass that particular process, come and sit down with us next Tuesday afternoon. We'll dedicate a part of that afternoon to sitting down, going through your requests, seeing what you want to be able to solve, and work with you in a classroom type environment to kind of get you to that answer. That was something that we had an audience of analytics people. We had people within marketing, products, some of the guys within my team, and each one of those different sessions we recorded and we hosted on YouTube. In absence of that sort of engagement model today, what we do have access to are people directly with Adobe, and I set up regular sessions for people across my team where we speak to people from Adobe Learning Services to take us through some of that course content. Our main focus at the moment is trying to get everybody across the skills needed to facilitate the majority of those stage one requests. So yeah, if you guys are interested, just let me know. I can help you out with that. So the majority of those skills sessions, those academy sessions, are focused on using a particular tool set called Adobe Analytics, which if anyone's worked in this session has worked with me closely before, is basically our bread and butter for everything that we do. Within that reporting platform, we have access to web behavior, which includes data from 11 million unique visitors, 16 million unique visits, and 85 million online click events. So it's essentially a very rich data source that gives us a glimpse through a online dashboard into everything that's occurring within that web channel. So how does data flow from our website into Adobe Analytics? So basically on our site, there are site metrics which are coded in what we call the data layer of each one of the web pages. Now, all of that data that exists within that layer are mapped into Adobe via tags, essentially. And we use Tilium as our tag management solution to be able to facilitate some of that. Say for example, if there's a particular a button on a web page, we can code that to be able to pass every time somebody clicks on that particular button through Tilium into basically a custom container that are mapped in the step 3 here into our Adobe reporting suite. And thus, because that data exists in our metadata, we can build reports and dashboards within Adobe Analytics to be able to surface reporting off the back of those sorts of interactions. So what Adobe Analytics offers us are a few different things. One, as I mentioned, real-time dashboards, which includes those key performance metrics, and it allows us to also facilitate automated report delivery. So if a stakeholder asks us for a particular metrics on a regular basis and we haven't set them up with a dashboard for whatever particular reason, this is usually the case for more senior executives who just want to kind of have a baseline view as to how many people were on our website and started an application, for example, and don't necessarily want to do any analysis themselves. We can give them real-time dashboards as to what's happening on the site through the Adobe Analytics platform. And if they don't want to use that, we can send them a regular email saying, okay, this is what's happened between this period or that. It allows us to also be able to do ad hoc analysis really quickly because all the data behind the platform is very well structured and it's real time. It allows us to be able to kind of jump in whenever we need to be able to answer something quite quickly. A scenario where this typically happens is, let's say, for example, the site's gone down. We can go in and take a look at how many people tried to get onto the particular site, which pages were they trying to view, how long did it take for them to render the speed or render the page, and the time and the speed that it took for them to be able to do so. A really good platform for us to answer those questions really quickly. And it also allows us to do basic audience segmentation. So understanding our audience profiles by demographics, by the sorts of web behavior or the pages that they visit, the particular subject matter areas that they concentrate on. You might have a particular audience that visits our website only to seek out things like health information, or you might have prospective BBY customers who regularly visit our website as part of the consideration phase prior to purchase. We can break down those particular audiences through the tool. For those who haven't actually seen what Adobe Analytics looks like, I've included a screenshot here. As you can see here, it's pretty straightforward. These sorts of trends of reporting dashboards we can pull together in a matter of a few minutes. On the left-hand side, we've got all of the different metrics available to us across the website. So how many people are coming to the website, which are new engagements, how many occurrences, i.e. how many times do they visit the particular page. And then on the right-hand side, you've got a whole bunch of different sorts of visualizations. You've got trend bar graphs, you've got call outs here. Each one of these different things you can drill down into a lower level of granularity as well. So yeah, a pretty straightforward and standard dashboard that works really well. However, there are some limitations. So because I'll go back to the screenshot, because everything that you see here is aggregated, it doesn't allow us to be able to understand, let's say, of those 11,728,000 visits or so, what happens within one of those visits. So who was the person who contributed to that visit? We don't have that ability to dive to that level of granularity through the Adobe Workspace solution. Because we don't have access to visit or event level data, we have a limited ability to be able to perform a deeper dive analysis, and a lot of stuff gets baked into bias heavy analysis with a reliance on inferencing. So what I mean by that is, for example, if we wanted to do funnel conversion or map out the stages a particular person goes through to submit or purchase a BBY product, we basically have to go into the reporting suite and map out conditions such as, okay, show me all the people that went from step 1 to step 2 to step 3 to step 4 to step 5 and then submitted. Whereas typically, you might see that particular behavior for the majority of your audience, but what about those people who go from step 1 to step 2, step to step 3 in the morning and then say, ooh, I don't have that additional information that I need for this application. I'll need to finish this off when I get back home. Come back later in the evening, go from the information pages to the terms and conditions to step 1 to step 2, so that you get what I mean. So there's a lot of different rules that we use that aren't capturing those particular scenarios. Another thing as well is there was a lot of inferencing taking place. So we would take a look at a report that would be generated off the back of Adobe Analytics and say, oh, look, there was a bit of a spike yesterday afternoon in terms of the amount of traffic that was coming through. Oh, and at the same time, we saw a little bit of a peak within the phone calls. Now, there could be some correlation there, but to be able to identify all of the traffic that came from online that did drive that phone call activity, we don't have that direct connection because we don't have that level of visibility. That talks to the second point there, and then no access to the variables. The web variables online don't allow us to be able to create things like attribution models, predictive models, regression models. Where basically, because everything's aggregated, we can't bake down all of the different things that are contributing to those sorts of predictors. So that's the reason why we developed Wally. So Wally stands for our Web Analytics Logical Layer. Basically, it's Bupa UK's richest data asset. So all of those 85 million unique records are passed into our enterprise data warehouse solution. These are updated on a daily basis. It's Bupa UK's largest data asset, so the 13 months of comprehensive historical behavior equates to around 300 gigabytes of storage within our centralized data environment. To give you a relative comparison, the member information tables within Swift equates to around 100 gigabytes of storage. And it's also Bupa UK's most accurate data asset in the sense that we get 100% reconciliation with our Adobe data source at any given period that we compare against. The industry average as given to us from Adobe was about a 4% variance. So when we got them to come in and take a look at our solution, see that we were able to fully reconcile to what was coming out of Adobe Workspace, it was a little bit of a success moment for us. So to go into what the solution is in a little bit more detail, so everything that exists behind Adobe Analytics, basically we tap into the metadata that sits behind that, and we bring all the assets, including traffic stats, online behavior, and all of the other online integrated tools, and pass that through into Enterprise Data Warehouse through the collaboration with the performance team. And because we can get access to all of this metadata on a visitor ID level, the value output that we can see off the back of that is the ability to be able to enrich direct marketing campaigns, or to be able to go into another level deeper to say, okay, for all the campaigns that we've got running on at any given period of time, how many people could we have refined or taken out of those leads as a result of any insights driven off the back of web behavior before the fact. It allows us to be able to complete our view of online and offline customer journeys by connecting things on a visitor ID level and a person party ID level to what are happening online as well as what's happening across our other channels. It allows us to be able to kickstart modeling activity, which is made possible through Clickstream data. So things like propensity to buy, understanding the sort of behaviors that are being exhibited online prior to a claim. We now have the ability to be able to do that through this. And it allows us to better understand our online micro moments. Now, a big thing that happens in digital is this floating around of the term micro moments. We always say, look, we want to be best positioned to be able to win these key moments every time they occur between us and the customer. Whereas my argument is the majority of the time we wait for those key moments or those micro moments to occur first, and then we react. So let's say, for example, we want to assist a customer through the application process. We wait till they start the application process before we engage with them. By being able to understand the behaviors that occur between those particular stages, it allows us to kind of start to assist them a little bit earlier on in the journey for each one of those. James is on the call as well. So James from the performance team worked with us to develop the schema design. I'll actually hand over to James to take us through this, if that's okay, James.
Yeah, no problem. So we've come up with a high-level enterprise schema design that we use within a data warehouse, and it's based around 3 key pieces of information, which are fact tables within the warehouse, which you can see highlighted in pink here. These are hits session and visitor level. Now hit is all the page level activity that goes on, so clicking on a particular page, accessing a video or some piece of online integrated media. A session with a particular piece of customer activity that's rolled up from all of these hit levels into an interaction that we have with the customer. So the equivalent in another channel might be a phone call. And the visitor level information is all of our customer information that we've gathered from the website. And we combine all of these together to create a holistic view of what the customer interaction with our company is to do with the website. We capture a lot of other dimensional information, so details around the hardware the customer is using, what applications, what software, in terms of browsers, the locale of the customer, so we can identify down to a particular postcode area where they're accessing the information, whether they're using a mobile. And we're also building out links to the multi-channel experience, so looking at some key information with response type, which links it to our call metrics that we hold within the enterprise data warehouse, and certainly leading up to the wider customer dimension that we're building cross-system. So interactions with PMI and Swift, with the Clinics environment and BOSS, and Travel and Magenta and such. So these are all being designed around this particular schema to allow connectivity with our other systems and channels. Okay, Maurice, if you could.
Yeah, so one of the things that we wanted to make sure that we baked into the schema design was to allow us to connect to existing data sources. So within the data layer, believe it or not, across our website, we have access to a series of different keys and identifiers that exist in other core systems, which allow us to be able to do so as a result of bringing that data in-house. So things that exist within our data asset include point IDs, which are links to our application tables, person party IDs, which are linked to pretty much a lot of everything else, membership IDs for authenticated users, which allows us to be able to link all of these different web activities and behaviors, any sorts of events that are triggered online to customers that we can see through the source systems that we access on a regular basis. So they have all been maintained to ensure that we can maximize the sort of value that we get out of that web activity. So the way Wally is updated and maintained, James?
Yep, we collect 3 zipped daily files which we are sent via a secure file transfer protocol from Adobe themselves, from their data warehouse suite. Within IT, we have an automatic process to move these files to a location that's accessible via the enterprise data warehouse. We unzip the files and begin a lengthy process of transforming the information into something usable by the business. So we cut the over 1,000 columns down to 170 that we found are the key variables, and that make up the fact and dimension tables that we saw on the previous slide. This is all the information organized into a logical data set around configuration. So this will be the hardware pieces, the browsers and connection types, which we just maintain a huge list that are replaced daily by our transformation protocols. And we also collate and append the visit information. So all of the hit level interactions, all of the customer detail, we're appending to a large data set over time. So we hold 13 months of this data, and we're constantly building on that to build up a bigger picture of how our customers are interacting with us. And then we build the dimensional model that you're seeing over the top, which is exposed to reporting suites and to the SQL environment that many of you are familiar with. Thanks, Maurice.
So where's Wally? So the location was obviously very important where we were going to store this particular data asset. The last thing that we wanted to do is say, look, there's a new promised land from a data set perspective, and if you want to get there, it'll take you a little bit of time. These views are all existent within our MOI enterprise warehouse, isn't it, James?
Yes, yeah. So we may have seen recently we've created several new databases that are in line with our team strategy for presenting a dimensional model to the business. And all of you should have access to the digital schema within the production environment. So you can access it via SQL Server Management Studio or via ODBC connections to the warehouse. But you'll already have been granted access to the digital schema, which is Wally, with all of the tables as we built them out in the logical model. And the location of it is key because we can also access the other systems that you use that have links to Swift. They're all held within the same environment, so you can cross-link fairly easily using the Swift keys.
Yeah, so one of the things that was incredibly important for us was the ability to have a data dictionary that's accessible for all of our different teams. Now, obviously, as of this afternoon, you're not all going to jump into Wally and start incorporating web behaviors into everything that you do. We don't expect that to happen. But when it does come the right time for you to be able to access the information, we want to make sure that there was enough supportive material available to you to be able to understand what are the variables you're being exposed to within this schema. So we ensured that we developed a data dictionary, which is currently accessible in our internal SharePoint. The link is in here, and I'll send this pack out straight after this. And what you should be able to see within this, basically all the different tables, all the different columns, the data types, the description as to what you're seeing there. So yeah, that'll be readily available to you. Examples of immediate data delivery. So we wanted to kind of give you a little bit of samples to kind of take home with you as part of our goodie bag here. There's some SQL code here as well as some other things that we've developed post the creation of this pack. That will allow you to start to easily play with the data assets. So if you want to take a look at linking web application behavior to our point system, there's some codes there. If you want to connect on and offline customer journeys through linking things like web behavior to our email channels for some of the campaign activity you guys are running at the moment, that's there. If you want to link it to response stat calls, that code's there. I've been working along some people within the marketing insights and effectiveness team to start combining these data assets to things like the Laps customer universe. Big shout out to Davide, who's definitely become my expert within that area. But what we've started to see is how easily it is to link into those different assets through the existence of those common keys. So things that we needed to do to deliver Wally. I think it officially is 9 months since we started this journey back in February. It was 9 months, 4 days ago. And like a good 9-month delivery process, it had its up and downs. So this particular solution, the ability to be able to take all the metadata that exists between Adobe Analytics, wasn't a standardized feature. So there were things like data warehouse that existed that allowed you to extract those aggregated values, but your ability to be able to dive into things like the visitor ID keys, unique identifier keys, the ability to pass through things that were coming in through different data source systems. So the point IDs that existed within the data layer, which were linked in with point, you wouldn't be able to pull those through the Adobe Data Warehouse solution. And when we approached Adobe to kind of get this dump, they basically said, yeah, it'll cost you around $320,000 for the implementation costs, plus £200,000 every year for the licensing for that data. But we managed to convince them to kind of set up a new process, which was released in the product called data feeds, which allowed us to be able to get the access to this metadata. Once we did have access, something that we thought would be a given was SFTP connections between us and a third party. We had to go through a lengthy process to kind of get approvals to get that stood up, and one of those approvals had to come from information governance to be able to prove the fact that we could bring in this level of information, because essentially we already had access to it. It was just aggregated, which wasn't really serving our purposes. We had to go through many different variations around the data design and the modeling exercises to get it into a relational structure that allowed us to reconcile to our source system, and allowed us to easily integrate with the other systems. So that took a little bit of time. And once we landed on a particular model, we had to manually load the history into the asset day by day with incredibly weak laptops. I think James, it was taking us 15-20 minutes to load in a day's worth of history to begin.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And to be able to
Yeah.
do that several times across different models was definitely a tedious exercise. Getting our access to our own file server to store the daily source files. And then once we did all that and we kind of wanted to rubber stamp the awesomeness of this solution, we had to set up some time to work with Adobe to sign off on the solution. So lots of little steps along the way that probably blew out this process for us. We would have liked to have delivered this quite quickly. But these were all the different political steps that we wanted to highlight that kind of blew that out a little bit longer than what we expected. But with this experience now, we can most certainly use these learnings for future data developments, and I know that's something that's incredibly key for the performance team. So what's next for Wally? So I'll go through the business cases and projects. So we're starting to do things like introduce web behavior variables to optimize campaign activity. So we're having discussions with the marketing teams now to kind of say, okay, this web behavior is available within our data assets, the same sort of data assets that we drive a lot of our campaign activity from. So there's definitely opportunities to start introducing some of our web behavior variables into that. We're wanting to start the development of models to predict propensity to purchase, claims and likelihood to churn. These are all key KPIs that we're looking to monitor going into the next financial year. And some of the things that we wanted to be able to support our decisions on the way that we engage with particular customers was to be able to develop models to predict their likelihood to carry out those key micro moments. So something that's a priority for us. Something else that we wanted to do, at least within the digital team, is to map out our most complex customer journeys online that are occurring online to optimize our customer experiences. So similar to the example I gave you at the top of this meeting around having to apply a heavier level of bias through a reporting suite, we can now start to just heat map the common areas that our customers are in when they're on the website and the common exit points to be able to come up with a hypothesis around what are the key needs that customers and prospects are looking to facilitate through the use of our website, and how can we optimize their pathways to reach those particular endpoints in a way that improves the customer experience. Other things that we're looking to do link response tab data with web behaviors to improve attribution modeling. So I know Joe in the marketing insights and effectiveness team has started to take a look into some of the links there, plus some of the codes that I've got earlier on in this deck. But really starting to build a stronger bridge across our channels there. From a data enhancements and extension perspective, James?
Yeah, well, we're looking to expand all of this rich digital information into our central customer dimension. So building up the visitor aspects into a more centralized location will help us pass that information out across the business and really enhance the links between these online and offline journeys that we've developed. And part of that is to take a lot of the business cases and projects that are being worked on within a digital space and apply automated flags within the customer dimension, so we can quickly take advantage of that and also pass on the benefits back to the business, so you can report on them really quickly from a data set without having to go through lengthy SQL coding. We're looking to support the response staff integration with some third-party data and linking to our Cisco call dimensions to really enhance this multi-channel experience. We've already established some automated financial reporting, so we can look at return on investment reports. That's gone into production in the last 2 weeks, so we're liaising with our on-premise finance team to transfer knowledge from the digital space into their arena and vice versa. So it's a mutually beneficial arrangement. And we're also looking to grow our capabilities in terms of our reporting enterprise tool, which is SAP Business Objects. So we've got a rudimentary universe out of the digital space, and you may see in the future when we're demonstrating business objects, the digital data being used there to showcase just what functionality business objects and what benefits business objects has over our existing Cognos platform.
Another thing to call out as well, actually, we send over requirements through to the performance team to kind of extend out our visitor table within Wally, didn't we? So some of the flags that we're looking to introduce into this data asset are things like lapsed customer flags or status flags, whether or not the customers have made a claim, so that, as James mentioned, hopefully that cuts out some of the lengthy coding that's needed to be able to kind of create those different universes within this schema. So it's also Wally's also going global, sorry. So we're rolling this solution out globally, and we're working with marketing units in Sanitas Global and ANZ to deliver the solution in each one of their local marketing units. This is a huge win for us because of all the lovely success stories that we hear out of the other marketing units. It's nice to know that we're contributing towards a bit of advancement on a global level. We're working closely with the data development teams across those different marketing units. We've identified digital data champions, so basically central point of contacts for each marketing unit and each analytics team, just to make sure that we've got that core focus group to kind of drive a high level of utilization of the data asset, and it's hoped that that group can also form an ideation group, so that we can regularly share case studies around web behavior analysis or anything that we deliver off the back of this particular data solution. So, for example, we might not be at a capacity to be able to deliver 5 deep dives, 2 campaigns, and a whole series of predictive models. But if each one of us develop that within our own marketing unit, and then share it around, then we can deliver a lot more solutions a lot quicker without any level of redundancy there. So going a bit deeper into the digital data champions. So for some people within this session, this isn't the first time that they've gone through this pack. We went through this pack with the people that we identified to be those digital data champions, and basically your point of contacts moving forward to ask questions about this particular asset, so that those questions can then be fed back through to me and James. So obviously myself within digital analytics as the champion there. The performance team, you've got James Ford and Andrew Higginson. Inside marketing insights and effectiveness, there's Shayla Mystery, Joe Crawford, there's Stuart Dedrick. And in Bupa Healthcare Analytics, there's Peter Woods. And for the global audience, there's myself from the UK, Robin Chin from Global, David Hirsch from Australia and New Zealand, and Javier Ortiz from Sanitas. So yeah, that's our solution, guys. I've left a good 20 minutes or so, plus a little bit of fat at the end, if depending on how deep we go, for some questions. Does anybody have any questions or any feedback off the back of all of this? Ooh, I might not have needed any time. All right, guys. If that's the case, if there's no questions or any feedback, I'm assuming there's probably going to be some talk behind the scenes.
Maurice, I had a question. It's Saul. You've got the slide that you had all the IDs for matching. It's quite an impressive brace of connectivity to our different systems.
Yeah.
What kind of percentage of each visit do you have some of those against? And I'd quite like to hear just a tiny bit more about how the web analytics is actually gathering in those from the various places.
Yeah, good question. So it depends on what we're looking at. So there's a few different areas of the site that are being improved, which will increase the level of visibility that we have. Namely the No Regrets project that's going on, which is basically a revamp of the My Bupa or the authenticated area of the site. Once that gets launched, then it's hoped that how that's embedded into the customer journey. So when a new policy is taken out and we're driving people to log on, we should get basically a full view of all of our different, or all of our new customers' web behaviors. What we have been able to see though, by scraping everything that we could over the past 13 months, are things like, from an application standpoint, we have full visibility of 171,875 application or point IDs that were generated online and their associated web behaviors over the past 13 months. From an authenticated user perspective, it's only around 2% of the web behaviors that we've got within Wally from authenticated users, so things that are connected directly to person party ID and membership numbers. So there's a massive opportunity for us to grow that out there. And yeah, everything else are probably initiatives that we're going to have to work with the rest of the business to be able to get a greater level of visibility on. So for example, one proof of concept that we ran with Michael Reeves earlier on in the year, unfortunately is no longer working at Booper, but was with the email campaigns, we can pass through things like a person party ID through the template, so that when the customer lands on our website, not only are they just referred to email traffic, but it's email traffic from Maurice or email traffic from Mr. Adam Smith. And if we can incorporate all of those into all of our email campaigns, for example, we would start to grow that level of visibility around our customer base or our prospects base and their online behaviors. The primary ID, so there's point ID here, membership ID, person party ID, but the prime ID for Wally is visitor ID. So for every visit onto the site, whether or not you're authenticated, whether or not you've been here before, whether or not you've started an application, you most certainly have a visitor ID, which is obviously going to be comprehensive. What the journey for us is to link those visitor IDs with IDs that make sense to these other source systems. So yeah, lots of activity that needs to take place to kind of build out that library. Lowest hanging fruit though, something that we have complete coverage of, are those point IDs in those applications, because they're generated online within the same at the same time as the visitor ID when they start an application. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, cool. Another really simple question was whether the SharePoint access has been granted for the data dictionary, or was that on a user by user basis? I can't remember, because I did try and click through to the data dictionary a few weeks ago.
James?
Yes, it should be granted access to the group of everyone who has access to the digital mark. Now, if there's any problems, just let me know and we can resolve that.
Yeah, no, I haven't tried it since I asked for it because I've been distracted with other stuff. So yeah, that's fine. I'll give it a go.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, and in terms of access to Wally, I contacted the digital champions as referred to a little bit earlier to kind of get a list of all the people in the teams and all their user IDs. So we kind of build all those user permissions straight off the bat. Actually, a good point from a user permissioning perspective. I believe I'm the data custodian, right, James? So it's basically a ServiceNow request that'll come through to me for approval, and then you'll be off from there.
Yeah, that's what. That's the process. So there's a ServiceNow request form that you fill in. It will automatically be sent through to Maurice to approve, and as soon as it's approved, you'll have access to the data set. No 5-day waiting period on this one. Yeah,
we're thinking of a Dragon's Den approach. So me and James are just trying to identify the two other people to. No, I'm joking. So whoever needs access to it, just let us know, and we can go from there. Usually for new starters and that, but everybody on this call most certainly should have access now. Thanks, Saul. Any other questions? Hopefully that kind of kickstarts anything that's on the back of anyone's mind. It's a friendly space. Don't feel scared.
All right, it's Paul Davis here.
Hey, Paul.
Just on the back of that access thing, obviously with this link to all this other personal identifiable data, who's checking who should have access to it, rather than it just being anyone who asks for it gets it? Because I think as a data set in its own right, that's fine, but because there are so many links to personal identifiable data in other systems, it's not necessarily a free-for-all.
Yeah, sure. Good question. I think from my understanding, people who have access to Moi, should have access to Wally anyway, because all we're doing is adding in web behavioral information above and beyond all the personal identifiable stuff that exists in other source systems. How is that being managed today?
So it's usually managed centrally by who is it that you usually get the challenge back? Well, it used to be Imogen, but she's not here anymore, so I guess it'd be.
Yeah.
I was going to say that Gordon that does it.
Yeah.
So you're piggybacking on the fact that if someone's got access to MOI, they should be okay to have access to this.
The new model is based around Active Directory authentication, so each data mart that's being built out in the new schemas will have a group owner. So Maurice is the group owner for digital information. That's down to that data custodian to decree whether or not a person should or shouldn't have access to the data or the sensitivity level of information within that.
But I guess, I was going to ask a similar question actually, in terms of your vision for the user base. I guess if someone who wants to use this, isn't already using SQL Server and making heavy use of things like the data in MOI, the chances are they're not going to be able to make very sensible use of this anyway, and probably, I'm thinking like a comms person or I don't know, something like that. They'd be better off coming to one of your champions, someone in our team or Stuart or yourselves, etc. Because without that MOI access, they're not going to be able to link it to anything potentially anyway. So.
Yeah, to be totally honest with you, everybody, from my perspective, just to be open and transparent, I think if you are a new starter and you only have access to Wally, then if you're not in my team, that's interesting. I think primarily you should be able to have access to a core suite of things so that we can start moving in the direction of building out solutions or insights that gives us a 360 view of the people or the groups of people that we're analyzing. From a from an ethical standpoint, look, there's a lot of things, to be honest with you, that I haven't caught out in terms of what's possible here that we could go into. But I think we just need to learn some of those lessons and ensure that faith in the performance team who fulfills the permissions that I'll grant if I do get a request are sensible about the way that's rolled out.
Yeah, and we've got things like business objects, enterprise reporting level coming in as well. So hopefully there'll be a layer of abstraction between the traditionally SQL Server Management Studio based querying for those who have less experience and who perhaps just want to touch on some of the Clickstream data that perhaps they're interested in. We'll be able to surface out through business objects, and they won't be granted wholesale access to information they shouldn't be viewing.
I think, to be honest with you, I think we're diving into a level that isn't very specific to Wally anyway. If I'm going to be totally honest, because these sorts of thoughts and processes and decisions around who gets access to what from a data perspective is not specific to just web behaviors.
You're right, it isn't. But I guess as data custodian, the ultimate call will be yours as to who gets access to it. So however the security model is applied by James and co, the ultimate decision will be yours as to who should or shouldn't have access. That is part of the role of data custodian. I know because I'm it for our playpen. Okay, my follow-on question then, if you thought that one was a doozy, you're going to love this one. What GDPR considerations have you had around creating a new personally identifiable data set?
So the GDPR consideration isn't something that's just specific to Bupa or this particular asset. The metadata that populates this data asset obviously comes from Adobe. And there are particular GDPR solutions that they're rolling out over the next few months, which we were only exposed to last Thursday. And we've got a few follow-up sessions with that. So all of the permissioning around capturing the data, or the ability to be able to apply Adobe Analytics on top of your website, and all the tools that are required on the website to allow users the choice to be able to know whether or not Adobe Analytics is running in the background whilst you're on the website, are all solutions that we're looking at implementing as a result of these new features. In terms of the So, for example, if we have a solution in place on the website so that when a customer starts filling out an application and they don't give us permission to capture or store that information, for example, that solution was always going to need to be put into place for our ability to store that stuff in point, right? So, if whatever happens on the source there, that will flow through to us as well. So if they don't give us permissions to store that data, that won't flow through to us. Does that make sense?
Yeah, from that side, I guess what I was thinking more is what people are going to do with this. So if people are going to start linking this and we're going to start doing profiling, segmentation, analysis, then one, we have to be really clear up front with the people that are giving us the data that we're going to do that. We've got to be really clear we're going to link it to their other Bupa information. And if they object to that linking, we need to be able to take them out of it. And also, if there's a subject access request from somebody, this information that we're creating or inferring from our analysis may need to be considered about how do we release that to someone. So it's probably slightly unfair of me, Maurice, to be honest, to kind of ask you. It's just, I guess, flagging it for everyone that all the stuff that we're going to start doing with new data sets, every time a new data asset is created, we are going to have to think about what that means for the upcoming GDPR rights and expectations, because it is, every time we kind of expand the picture, it's great from an internal point of view, we understand people more, but it also puts a greater overhead on us telling the customer what we're going to do with their data, and therefore could challenge our privacy notice in terms of whether it's up to date enough, are we clear enough that what it can be done for. And if people then start kind of creating additional profiling or additional analysis on top of it, and that starts getting used, we need to make sure that we've properly risk assessed that from a GDPR point of view, and the say if people object to being profiled, that we can take them out, and that may not be from the Adobe side, that may be that they centrally object, and how do we feed that through? And some of them, you're right, are central questions. It's just we need to be, I guess, thinking about them as we create new data sets so we don't make the problem worse or the implementation of a solution harder than it needs to be. And I think because of all the joins you've got to all this personally identifiable information that people are going to want to join together and do stuff with, and that's some of the stuff you're talking about, predicting churn, profiling. That's a big focus for GDPR right now. And to be fair, we're not really sure where the guidance is going to end up on profiling as to whether what we do is high enough risk that it needs specific consent or not. That's not quite there yet. So I guess it's just to bring it to everyone's attention that this is those considerations need to be made by everybody. It's not just a central thing. It's every user of data really should be thinking about what they're creating, where they're storing it, what's held in it. Because if someone comes along and says, give me all your information, and we've created a profile that says high risk of churn, low value customer, with all this web information on it, we'd have to give them that.
Yeah, so there's two levels to that. No, I 100% agree. The first level is the actual capture of this information in the first instance, because irrespective as to whether or not we've migrated this into a central location, say for example within MOI or within the enterprise data warehouse, we have access to this data anyway through the form of Adobe Analytics, just not to the level of granularity that we have now. Because albeit when we haven't stored it in the past, Adobe has always stored it. That's the reason why it's now possible for us to be able to bring this through. So Adobe are very much aware of the fact that they have access to this sort of information within the data layer across all of their different business partners. So that's the reason why they're rolling out particular solutions and advice around the way that we need to position the running of this tool on the site to our customers to ensure that they're making an informed decision as to whether or not they allow us the access to be able to do that. So any changes from that standpoint, which are changes that we've got planned to look at anyway, it's actually it's part of my homework at the moment that I've not even handed in yet, because I'm still getting timings around when we can actually make the changes to those privacy statements online. That will allow us to have this sort of access or not. Does it make it, as it stands now, we've got millions of records that are on a visitor ID level, which don't connect to any of our other source systems as well. So at the bare minimum, if there's a massive coup and we have to get rid of all the other IDs that do connect to the other source systems, we still have access to on a visitor ID level that gives us that level of transparency around complex customer journeys that are taking place within the web channel, which will allow us to make better decisions on how we improve that customer experience online. Will we be able to link that and personalize on an individual level though? No. So there's a whole bunch of stuff, and GDPR obviously makes things a lot more complex, but it's very much not specific to just Wally, that's for sure. Anyone from BHA? I'm conscious that you guys have to head off in a few minutes. So we've heard from the campaign guys. Anyone in BHA or Marketing Insights and Effectiveness? No? Any other further questions, guys? All right. I'll take silence as no. Obviously, there's probably going to be some questions off the back of this a little bit later on for you shy ones out there. So, like I said, reach out to your digital data champions, and I'll catch up with the champions in a week or so to kind of see if there's been any feedback as a result of this particular session. And yeah, we'll take it from there. I'll give you guys 20 minutes back and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you so much, guys.
Cool. Thanks, Maurice.
Cool.
Cheers, mate.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks.